I think a lot of people found Jo a bit of a mystery because one of the ways she looked visually, she was a beautiful, stunning woman, exotic looking because of her mixed parents, I mean the Sri Lankan and the English, and that added to her work as well in the sense that she always felt like she was a maverick, an outsider, so consequently she was drawn like a moth to a to a flame to anybody who was outside the norm.
Possibly her interest in dressing up, also stemmed from being different, because when I first saw her in the drawing studio at St Martin's when I was a student, she was ravishingly beautiful, but she was covered up. She wore a hat pulled down, sunglasses in the studio, long skirts, everything covered, So she looked quite girly, I suppose. But when you looked at the drawings, it was just like an explosion, they were so powerful. There was nothing sort of meek and genteel about the drawings,
Now she produced her work so as, I don't know, like a bee produces honey. If you are saying that you don't like sweets, she would say that she doesn't care.
Her drawings that she did in the nightclubs from the 60s right up until her death in the 2006 were her own personal choice, where she picked the people that she wanted to engage with. She was the driving force.
She was open to alternative ways of living and dressing, and she enjoyed that very much. And I think she also liked the theatre for that sort of reason, the dressing up as a part.
And as it happened, through my own connection to theatre, I tried to lure her to theatre. I took her to different productions, and so the interest was discovered. I was seated with her during the premiere. I saw her. This was marvelous that she was sketching in darkness, and then what she told me, then she was returning to the hotel, and she had the first sketches were on the very the floor was covered. This I saw. It was covered with a big paper used very often for packing. Yes? And she made the first sketches, and then she worked for a whole night almost, and she trained herself that on time, as the messenger came from the printing house to take it to the printing house. It was already done. So she was such a meisterin of art that she could adjust brilliantly to these front conditions.
There was nothing slow about her work. She could do, because some of the drawings that we always did at St Martin's was some of the exercises are 1-minute drawings, 2-minute drawings, 5-minute drawings, and she also practiced that, and she worked at that speed. Even if it was a 20-minute drawing, she would work furiously as if it was going to be only 5 minutes,
I was enchanted by her drawings, but her inspiration was basically from the street or from forbidden addresses, which I was afraid to explore in London or in Berlin or in Paris.
She liked subversing things because it gave her pleasure, because it stretched her in a creative way. From a female standpoint, she wasn't focused on the female. It was of the person, so it was the male and the female psyche, so it's both. When she was drawing you, she'd be bringing out sometimes the male or the female side of you, because we are a mix of both.
You know, her drawings were never sort of pretty. I mean, some of the people were actually rather pretty looking, you know, but she never made people pretty. I think she hated that, you know. And her work is actually quite, it's powerful, you know, and it can be a bit hard-edged. And also with the use of colour and the way she used it, in a sense, in some ways, it's quite crudely done, you know. But she made it work for her, and I think it lends itself to that period and to that genre of fashion and art extremely well.
If you think of a lot of the punks and things like this that Joe was drawing in, that were living in the squat around the corner from her, and people like Susie and the Banshees hanging out with the skinheads, all of those kind of people were living it. They were real. They were, you know, they were wearing their clothes, their hair and all the rest of it. They weren't trained, they were doing their own thing. So consequently, it was like a clash of all sorts. It was like a melting pot of all the most bizarre, creative people that you could want to get together and throw together. And everybody, whenever you went out, it was like, it became like a rite of passage. You had to dress up. You couldn't get in. Like some of the people that were on the doors. I mean, I can remember Kinky Galinkies, where you had Venus Mantrap. Venus was the most divine. He always called himself a man in makeup. But Venus was a trained dancer at the Ballet Rambert. But when he was dragged up, he was scary. But he'd be the meter and greeter. So if you didn't cut the mustard, you couldn't get past him to get in. So consequently, I think all the people that did eventually get into all these different clubs had one link that drew them together, was they were all prepared to play the game and dress up and be as creative as possible.
That she captured a moment in, I suppose, the British culture of punk that nobody else really did. She recognised that, you know, as an artist, there's something that you see in your vision that you are inspired by. You feel you want to recreate it, or be inspired to create something from it. And I imagine that's what they did for her, you know, and that's really why she was inspired, why the work was so powerful and so beautiful.
She was a maverick, so she was quite capable of going to places by herself. She was going to New York to the gay clubs like the Meat Market, and you know, we're talking hardcore, and you know, she'd probably be one of the few women that would be in the club. She'd, you know, do a recce and check out who was, you know, who was round and about, and then she'd get her sketch pad. She always had the trolley on wheels with a black bag that was full of her box of tricks. So there'd always be usually an A3 size sketch pad and all her pens, pencils or whatever. So in the club she'd have her shades on, but underneath the shades she'd have her glasses that, you know, for seeing. And I'd think, well, how can you see to draw? You're in the dark. You know, that can't be right. You're sitting there in a dark nightclub with shady lights. So what are you actually seeing with a pair of shades on? And I started to realise that she always looked at you, but she didn't actually look at the colours or the crayons or paints or anything like this. It was like she automatically would, her hand would jut out, and she'd pick, and she'd run her fingers across the colours and then pick a colour. And so the initial drawing would be several different coloured lines.
I mean, there was a period when she used a lot of fluorescent colours, and I believe it's when she went to one of the visits she went when she went to New York, and techno and fluorescent colour were becoming into the mainstream through the development of technology and computer imaging, and she loved that, and she did a whole load of work on, you know, using that colour palette.
Joe was obsessed with the book by Dobson, Alice in Wonderland, and Alice Through the Looking Glass, and Alice Through the Looking Glass was her last and final piece. But both pieces, she did them as installations, in the sense that she keyed in on lots of different people for the different characters in Alice, but also, there again, blending the genders, so, which was very fetichistic, I suppose, in some people's eyes, but also very much of the Victorian age too, if you think about it, the nod to the corsets and the restraints and all that ensued. So she was just flipping everything on its head. So Alice could be, she did drawings, for example, of Alice at all ages. So Alice, she did drawings of children as Alice, boys and girls in the garb, and then Alice as a he, she, Alice as a she, he, Alice, you know, so blending all the genders and things like this, and the outfits, so you didn't know which way was up, basically, and the colour combinations as well were really important. Her use of UV colours and things like this, which was a thread that ran through all of her work from the 60s all the way up to the end. The Alice Through the Looking Glass for her was really poignant. It was a celebration because she was basically also putting her fingers up. It was like, I've done what I want to do, I've lived the life I've wanted to, I've been true to myself, and that's one of the things she was always saying to me. Everything has a price, and it's your choice on whether you choose the path that you create or you allow others to choose the path. And I think that's why her drawings are so important, because it's like she sees you in all your colours, you know, of the, you know, the darkness, the lightness, the light, you know, the humour, the seriousness, all aspects, and that's why I think they, you know, they retain their freshness.